All right, listeners, welcome to season 2, episode, what is it, 3 or 4? And we've got Chris Conley on the podcast today. So welcome, Chris.
Hey, Jen, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Always. And so Chris is a mental health guru, and he has done a couple of different jobs in his life. And so I wanted to bring Chris on because I want to bring people on the podcast who do a really good job of being with people genuinely, and who are learning to be with themselves, and who might have experienced some sort of career transition. And so these podcasts are meant for you to be able to learn something, maybe laugh a little bit, maybe cry, but that's okay too. But to be able to kind of come away from this podcast learning something new about a particular topic. And so mental health is this huge buzzword, right? And I think that there are probably 20 million different solutions in the world for dealing with mental health and what that looks like. So, Chris, can you tell our listeners a little bit about you and your career journey and what you're currently up to right now?
Sure. So my career journey has always been fueled by I want to help people.
Mm,
It's taken a couple different shifts over time. I started as a youth pastor. Did that for about a decade of my life. From there, I transitioned into mental health work. I'm just telling you the bullet points because there's stories and stories between all the bullet points. But
there always is a
uh,
story.
moved into mental health work. And then did a little bit of time kind of dual rolling where I was part-time mental health work and part-time pastor work.
Mm,
And now I've landed full-time doing mental health work where I am the clinical director of a local private practice, which means I kind of help support the therapist and help run the business. And I also see my own clients. And yeah, that's what I'm up to. That's the very
so
short.
what has you landing in this world of mental health, right? So you've come from like the spiritual place of, working with kids, and this premise of you're passionate about people and you want to help people. Why mental health?
Well, when I was a teenager, I'm from an army family, so we moved around. And when I was a teenager, we moved to the Hampton Roads area, and I had a really hard time with the transition from one group of friends to a new
Yeah.
community. And this is back in the '90s. You're not texting people, you're not hopping online, and like when you moved across the country, you moved and like
Mhm.
you were uprooted. And I had a real hard time with that. I got connected to a local youth group at a church. That's where I found friendship and community. And like some of my best friends to this day are people I met in that group.
Mm,
And from that point, I always had this drive of how do I help people be, and so ministry was the start for me
yeah.
because that's where I found my help as a depressed teenager. Um, as I would do ministry work, particularly youth ministry work, I found myself more drawn to the kids who were going through it or the families that were having a hard time. And like, just honest to God, bored with like the stupid games and the pizza parties and the Mario Kart tournaments. I mean, those were all fun, but I
Yeah.
didn't find a lot of meaning out of that stuff. And so I started studying mental health, went to get my master's degree, thinking it would just be a tool in my tool belt as a pastor. Um, and then as life moved on and things happened, and again, stories and stories and stories I won't share with you guys today, but it made sense for me to move full time into mental health work. And again, dabbled in some ministry jobs since then, but it's just really been out of this draw of like I want people to find peace.
Yeah.
I want people to find joy. And I think mental health work has been my path to do that.
When you talk to people and you take on your client load and you kind of are, helping grow this business as a clinical director, what do you find that a lot of people struggle with? Maybe even like specifically like males, or if it's females too, but I know that this mental health word, I think, is becoming more widely accepted. And it's like just more okay to talk about how things are not actually okay. And then you find, like, out in the real world where you're living, that there
Sure.
are a bunch of other people that are going through some shit too. So, like, what
Oh,
is
can I
it?
cuss?
Yeah. Oh, we can cuss in here. Yeah.
Sweet.
We cuss in here.
Awesome.
And so what do you find that most people struggle with that you talk to on a day-to-day basis? And maybe what are like a couple of two, like maybe one to two things that you can like start somebody off with, right? Like if somebody was curious about mental health, what are they typically going through that you notice? And maybe like what are like a couple of ways to just get started, right? I'm sure we could go down the rabbit
Yeah.
hole of like a whole thing, but
Well, sure. I mean, mental health is this huge umbrella that can, address relationship problems, emotional problems, behavioral problems, parenting problems. But at the end of the day, I think when I try to think about like just what is good mental health, I think it is just feeling okay about who you are,
mm,
right? Like when somebody has a bad day and they feel a little sad, it's not to belittle that moment. Like that's not a mental health problem. That life is just sad sometimes.
yeah.
Um, when you're a little stressed out at work, that's not a mental health problem. Like work can be stressful. When
Mhm.
you're having a hard time with your significant other, that's not a mental health problem. Some relationships are hard. It spills into mental health when it starts to overtake and like shade everything. So I'm sad
Ah,
to the point that I can't go to work or I can't be my best self in my relationship consistently. I'm anxious to the point where I'm short with the kids all the time. Not sometimes, because again, being a parent's hard. You're gonna be short with them sometimes,
terrible.
but
Terrible
but
sometimes.
terrible. But
Terrible.
but when it like it just shades your whole. That's when I'm like, man, that's real mental health
Yeah.
challenges. Um, and I think at the core of that for people is the way they feel about themselves, as in, do I have value? Do I have worth? Do I have purpose? And does anybody else give a shit?
Mm,
Like, I have joked, and I don't joke this way to belittle my profession, but I'm like, I think a handful of my clients would not be my clients if they just had like better friends or better relationships. They had somebody who could validate what they're going through or who could just be a companion throughout. I remember a time my father passed about 10 years ago, and it was a really hard season and probably one of the most, if not the most influential moment in shaping who I am now. But I remember a moment where I was just at my apartment, a friend was visiting, and like I just fell into like the sadness, thinking about the loss. And she didn't say anything, she didn't do anything. And this wasn't a romantic relationship, this was a platonic friendship. She just reached over and grabbed my hand and she just sat with me and allowed me to feel my feelings,
yeah.
allowed them to pass. And then when I was kind of back, we just went about whatever we were up to that day.
Mm.
And I think that's what a lot of people who are feeling low or who are feeling lost, I think they're looking for that just as much as they're looking for like, what are three things I can do to like get rid of my anxiety, or five ways I can be a more effective dad, or whatever. And
Yeah.
those are all important conversations too. But that wrestling with my worth and my value and companionship, I think, are huge.
So what I'm learning from you today is like the first thing I'm learning is that you can, if you think you might be having some mental health shit going on, the first thing you can do is start to look at like, is this a daily occurrence? Is this something that like, am I just having a bad day? Because bad days happen, right? Like not everybody's gonna have a perfect day. And even when my boys come home from school, they're like, I had a bad day. I'm like, well, there's tomorrow. Like
Sure.
you're not gonna get punished, not gonna get in trouble for having a bad day. We're all gonna have them. I'm gonna have bad days at work. Like it's the real life. We live here. There's no other life that's here, so we just take what we can get. But I think you've given me a lesson in like in our listeners too. So listeners, if you start to notice that things are getting shaded by that issue or that feeling, or you're starting to ask yourself these questions and not have solid answers for yourself. So if you are starting to feel like, you know, every day is a bad day and it's shading you and it's overtaking you, because that's what I've heard. Those are like really strong words to articulate what that might look like for somebody. That's probably a sign to get some
Yeah,
help. And then
for sure.
you're also teaching me that it does take value and it does matter who your friends are. I read something somewhere that like you're the sum of like your 5 friends that you're around. And I cannot not think about that anymore when I think about who I surround myself with, because I want to, like, right? We all want to have these goals. You want to do big things, but like if you're the sum of the 5 people, like who do you want to surround yourself with that's going to help you answer these questions for yourself? So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so finding these friends, and then something else that you've taught me and that I also feel is that when you're going through something hard and you're going through some sort of like grief, we're going to pivot to that word of with. And so as a mental health therapist now, you probably do a really great job of being with other people, probably with other therapists when you're supporting them and kind of giving them actionable things about how it's going with their clients, or like, providing like a sounding board for like, did I do the right thing? Um, but talking about the fact that you are with people when they're grieving and what that looks like. Like, what does that actually look like? I think sometimes we use this word like, you're fine, everything's okay. Well, at least X didn't happen. No, like it was so powerful for someone to let you feel what you were feeling. And then like you let it go. Cause I feel like the sooner we accept whatever we're feeling and we let it out, it helps us like regulate ourselves. So if
Yeah,
you're someone who maybe feeling overtaken by your stuff and you need to maybe surround yourself with different friends, but you haven't found a way yet, how does a mental health therapist help with that? Like what do they do? Like what kind of tools do they give people? You don't have to give me all the trade secrets, but
sure.
what are some of the secret sauce to like kind of getting your way out of this shade?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing you get if you connect with a good therapist is a place where you feel comfortable being open.
Mm,
Um, because being open and vulnerable when you're in one of those bad headspaces is scary, right?
mm,
You know, if I like, there's a way, the moment I shared with you from my life, there's a version of that where somebody has feelings in front of their friend and their friend is like, oh, this is weird, what's going on? And
mm-hmm.
maybe not even trying to be hurtful, maybe they're just like shocked. And now I'm like, oh, I'm weird for feeling this way, right? So a therapist is able to, have a safe place for you to be open and share. And you if you have a good therapist, you can say pretty much anything,
And not
and you're
startle them.
you're
They're not surprised.
not startle them. The amount I mean, if I had $1 for any time I had a client say, I'm gonna tell you something, and it's probably gonna be like the craziest or worst thing you've ever heard.
You're like,
I'm
try
like,
me.
bet. I'm like, bet. And they say it, and my face like doesn't change at all. Um, because one, it's not.
Mm.
I've been in people work of some sort for 20 plus years. Um, I've had my own personal bullshit. So I'm sure there will come a time where somebody will do that, or at least maybe I'm like, at least mental note, like, yeah, that's the top. But
Yeah.
like it doesn't happen. So a good therapist will be able to facilitate a place where you can be on. And because what happens is when you can be honest about what you're feeling, then you can start getting to the why you're feeling that way.
Mm.
And if I can give you like a quick mental health 101 lesson, you said you
Love it,
wanted some
please.
tips, so I'm
I
going to give
want
you some
tips.
quick tips, right?
Okay. Yes.
So all feelings are messengers that something needs your attention.
Mm.
It can be good or bad. It can even be true or false. But you think about your three big categories of feelings, and there's definitely more, and there's nuances, but there's bad, nervous, and angry. Those are kind of your big three categories of emotions. And this is not a black and white science. This is not clinical literature. This is just stuff that I've kind of made up as I've worked. So you're not going to find this. And
Yep.
so probably somebody can tell me why this is not completely accurate, and that's fine. But I
That's all right.
find this helpful. Sadness is an emotion that's telling you to slow down and pay attention to what's going on around you. And clinical depression comes with low energy, low mood, low motivation, which I'm not saying that those are good things, but slow down and pay attention to what's going on around you. Um, Stress and anxiety are basically saying pay attention to what's going on around you because you may have to do something.
Mm.
Um, so we've
Like
all been
flight
there
or
where,
fight. Like I've obviously heard of that, like in psych, right?
yeah,
The flight,
yep,
what
fight or
makes you like
flight.
a flight.
But it's that like if you're nervous about your big exam tomorrow, maybe that anxiety is telling you get off the Xbox and go study for a minute
Yeah.
because you have something to do tomorrow. It's not necessarily a bad, it feels bad, but it's not a bad feeling necessarily. And again, when with the sadness being the thing to slow down, it's, pay attention. Usually it's about pay attention to what's changing around your world so you can adjust, right? So if you're sad, slow down, pay attention to what's changing. Um, I'll kind of give like the simple example of that is if I was going to get dinner with a friend tonight and they called me last minute and said, "Hey man, I can't make it." I might feel sad for half a second. That's me saying, "Oh, something's changed and I need to adjust." Right. So I'm going to go have dinner with my fiance, or I'm going to go home and I'm going to cook something for myself, or I'm going to do whatever. Slow down and adjust. When you get to anger, anger is telling you that there is some perceived injustice in your life that you either need to rectify or forgive. Um, right. So if you're angry, it's because something bad happened and that's injustice. So, somebody was rude to you in the parking lot at the grocery store. The injustice is I don't deserve to be treated that way. So now I'm a little angry. Now,
Mm.
whether you rectify that or you forgive, obviously that's case by case, but those are what our big three emotions are doing. Sadness is slow down and pay attention to what's changing so you can adjust. Anxiety is pay attention to like if there's anything you need to be doing right now. And anger is recognize that there's been some injustice that you need to rectify or forgive.
Oh, Chris, I cannot even try to replay that back. So, listeners, when you need to go back to this note, just replay this because he did that summary really good. And so our feelings are messengers. They're telling us things about how we need to be interacting with our world. And I love that. I work with a professional coach. And when I started my business, I was like, I need somebody to like walk with me, right? So like this is probably the best investment I can make so I don't feel like I'm alone or just kind of like in this vacuum of my own thoughts. And so I've learned to start asking myself when I'm feeling a certain way, right? Like if I'm getting some like anxious feelings or I'm feeling stressed or I have a lot on my plate or not enough on my plate and I have to get more work, what are these feelings telling me? So instead of feeling anger or feeling anxious, I'm like, all right, I'm starting to feel this, this, and this. This is what happened this morning. What do I need to learn at this current moment? Or what do I need to do differently right now? Like, I feel like if you can get quiet and slow down long enough, you can pay attention to like what your body is telling you. Because I feel like for me, I do believe that God gives us intuition. I think that God can give us
Mm-hmm.
quiet if we can just
Sure.
slow the hell down for a minute, get off of this, which is like so distracting at times, to be able to listen to what's happening. So you've given us like so much meat on that. I want to transition this to talk about like, okay, you talked to us about feelings and adult
Mm-hmm.
feelings. Let's talk about kids because I have listeners who have kids, AKA I also have kids that you've probably seen running around and hurting themselves for
Sure.
no apparent reason. And so when I think about kids and learning how to be with kids and help them be with their feelings instead of being like, you're fine, you're okay, no big deal. How how can we be with our kids? Like I know that you have a background working in, mental health with kids. So like how can we be with our kids, especially if we are trying to, right, regulate our own selves? What do you tell parents sometimes, or what are the things that you might hear?
Yeah. Well, I
That's a
mean, let's
huge
just use
topic.
sure. Let's use that same three emotion framework.
Yeah.
Use those, with your kids. So when your kids are sad, like, hey, bud, what do we need to like look at and adjust to? If your kid
Mhm.
is stressed out, hey, man, what do you feel like needs our attention right now? And you can use our language because we're going to partner with you. I'm your
Yeah.
parent, I'm your guardian. So what do you think we need to adjust to? What do you think needs our attention? With anger is a little harder with kids, but because kids have that like this is not fair, this is like everything can be an injustice to kids.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you can just kind of have that like, hey man, like just tell me a little bit what's happening, what are you thinking? um and then if you need to frame that into like, do we need to forgive or fix, which is a kid word for rectify, do we need to forgive or fix? um
Oh, so
but
good. An
but
hour.
I
What a language, like what a word to be with our kids. Hour. I don't think I've ever said that. So thanks for teaching me that today. Listeners, listen to that hour and what do we need to do to adjust our thoughts? Or I don't know. You said it better than I did.
Yeah, well, thank you for that.
So
The
good.
other thing I really, really try to challenge parents on, and I'll be honest, I have recently taken on the role of kind of, we're not married, so I don't know if I'm allowed to call myself a stepdad quite yet, but I basically am a stepdad to some kids, and that's been new to me in the last, year and a half, 2 years
Yeah.
that I've really kind of taken on that role. So this is hard. I can tell you this, it's hard for me too. Let me tell
Mhm.
you that. Um, but I think one thing that would just go so far in the way we handle our children or the kids we're responsible for is before we respond, if we can take a breath, am I about to respond in a way that's going to guide the kids where they need to go? Or am I dealing with my own feelings about this?
Mm.
Because I think when you yell at your kids, I'm not saying there's never a time to yell at the kids, but there's probably never a time to yell at the kids. The God's
Only if
honest
they're
truth.
running in the middle of the street and I see a car
Right,
coming.
that's
I
right.
am
Stop.
hollering. I am
Yes, yes,
hollering.
yes. Okay, there's our exception. But when you're yelling at the kids, don't talk to me that way. I'm not trying to guide you. I am trying to deal with my own feelings because I'm feeling disrespected. My
Mhm.
anger, I'm feeling an injustice. My kid does not respect me, and that's an injustice.
Mm, mhm.
And, so is the way I'm responding, is it guiding them to how they need to grow? Or am I just dealing with my own feelings? If I'm just dealing with my own feelings, that's not the way to respond to my kid. Now, don't get me wrong, go deal with your own feelings. Pain in the ass when your kids don't respect you, and you should be angry about that.
Preach, preach.
But,
Mhm.
but is the way I'm managing it with them guiding them in the right way, or am I just dealing with my own feelings about it? Because
Mm,
they are not the ones for me to deal with my own feelings around.
yeah. I've heard this said and I've like seen this like thing like go around on Instagram, right? All these beautiful thoughts and things that sometimes people will share and they talk about how like the generations that are kind of coming up and they're exploring mental health and they're talking about it and they're advocating for it or they're like sharing it with people that they know saying, "Hey, I am in counseling too, like I'm going for to therapy too because this for me is very hard." It like opens up this door to like have conversations about it and then it like opens up more conversations for them to go deeper because I feel like parents who are working on their mental health right now are doing this thing that I've seen on Instagram where they're healing along the way. And so they're healing while they are trying to parent. And I don't know who I need to give
Sure,
credit. I don't know who I need to give credit to for saying this, but like it was said that like they are healing along the way while they parent and like it's double work, right? Because you're trying to like parent yourself and then you're like trying to
sure.
parent the mouthy kid in front of you. And so I find that
Yeah,
that breath, that taking a breath before you go ahead and just react, sometimes will save you some
yeah.
tears later
Well,
on.
and it's hard. Like the way that I lay these things out, like it sounds nice on
So
paper. It's really
easy.
hard to do.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a fine line between, again, like for me, it's always like, am I processing my feelings on the kids? But
Yeah.
with the kids is
Ooh.
not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's not bad for the kids to see like, hey, this is how mom processes when she's sad, or hey, dad just went to go take a jog because he got angry at work today. Like it's not. I remember we had probably a year and some change ago, had to take my cat to the vet, and I was like worried he was gonna like have to be put down,
Mm.
and like he wasn't. He was fine. He was just being a little asshole. Um,
Pets will do that.
but I was in the feelings of that. And I went over to Tiffany, that's my fiance. I went over to Tiffany's house, which by the way, she's awesome. Go back and listen to her episode. She was
Yes,
just
yes,
on
this
here a little
previous
while
one.
ago.
Yes.
Um, but I remember going back to Tiffany's house and like crying on the couch because I was just like coming down from thinking I was gonna have to put my cat down. And in
Mhm.
my head, I'm like, well, I think he was 12 at the time. 12-year-old is sitting over like, do I want to cry in front of him? Like, or do I want to see him to see me upset? And I was like, no, it's fine for a kid to see that a grown man has feelings about a pet having to possibly be put. That's fine. That's
Yep.
healthy.
Yeah.
Now, what's not healthy is if I'm rude to him because I'm sad, or if I'm short with him, or if I'm ignoring him, or if I'm not able to give him attention because of that. That's where it's not. So there, see, there's like nuances here, you
Yeah.
know.
And like you, I feel like you, they're watching us grow up too, and like trying to parent them and do like what's age appropriate. Like I remember a time where both my husband was gone work trip, and in the middle of the night my youngest woke up with croup. And so like if you've ever heard of croup before, like it happens in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night every single time without fucking fail. And like he woke up, I heard it, it was just me with the two boys. They were like probably 4 and 2 at the time. And so my adrenaline is running, I'm running, so I'm getting them to the emergency room because at the time they would like not give me like a consistent steroid. I always had to like go and be seen with him. And so we went in, they took us right back because they could hear that he could not breathe. And then finally the nurse was like, Mom, come sit down right here. And I was like, hey, so I think I might puke, but could you please get me a 7-Up right now? I'm a little thirsty. And she was like, yep. And then my oldest was like, are you okay, Mom? I'm like, I'm so good, but I'm so thirsty from all that running
Mm-hmm.
to get here. And so like, cause I'm carrying them, right? Both of them. And so we got home and I felt like, that come down of emotions. I went upstairs, totally puked. And then I changed their clothes, put their pajamas on, and they had no idea that I went upstairs and puked just from coming
Mm-hmm.
down from all of it. And then we went to bed, and I was like, it's not like for me right now with their age, they're not going to understand like what's happening. They don't know. And like, they're not even paying attention to that either, I don't think. But like, as I've gotten older, I've learned to kind of like let them see some of the stuff that I go through. Like we had lost our dog. She had passed away right in front of us. And
Mm-hmm.
like it was like very hard for me to
Yeah.
watch the entire thing happen in the morning. And like I just like let them see me cry. I knew it was going to make them more upset, but I was like, it's okay for like you to see me do that. But learning that line of like where it's appropriate, like how we teach that along the way is like, I don't know. I don't think there's been any master book on it yet about parenting. Have you made that one yet? That book? Have
No,
you made the book yet?
gosh, no. I'm no author. And
Not yet, Chris.
it's something that you learn as you
Yeah.
go, man. And it's
Yeah.
not something you do perfectly. And if you tell yourself you have to do it perfect, then you're just gonna mess it up more.
Yeah.
Um, so you know, because you can also show your own kids like how to have grace for yourself too in the
Yeah.
process, and like own up to your kids when you've messed up. Like
Totally.
say, hey, I was angry and I shouldn't have talked to you the way I did this morning, or hey, I don't usually get that mad at people when we're out shopping, but for some reason that person made me mad, right? Like just, and I shouldn't have done that. I wish I had done it this way. Like it's,
Mm,
model that stuff for them too.
yeah, to have that grace. So we can teach our kids how to kind of appropriately handle ourselves, right? And have grace for ourselves when we're having our own feelings. And also like kind of showing them ways that we appropriately handle things, right? Sometimes if we're feeling a certain way, we're going to go for a run. Chris, you're never going to see me go for a run if I'm feeling anxious. I don't like running. I might walk, but running is never going to be
See,
my never going to be
I'm the
my coping
opposite. I'm the
mechanism.
opposite. If I don't get my cardio in the morning, I am a grouchy asshole. And
Wow.
if I don't do it for a few days, I'm no good to be around.
Oh my goodness. That's not it for me when I'm processing things. And see, listeners, you're seeing all types of way that people be with themselves. And so Chris is with himself by exercising. For me, it's like baking and being able to bake and like work with my hands and think at the same time. I love to bake. But also to like being able to get it out. Like I've learned that sometimes like if I need to just get out everything I need to say, I will call people who I trust and be like, need to word vomit right now. I'm going to get all of it out and I might repeat it twice, but I promise it's going to be worth your time and I
Hmm.
trust you. All right. So, Chris, you've given us like so much good stuff. And I feel like we could probably do like episode like 2 on this mental health thing because I feel like
Anytime,
we
anytime.
okay, we're gonna have to do another one because I feel like there's so many avenues we could go down in like coping mechanisms and like kids. There's so many avenues, and so let's cap this off by like kind of just recapping. So we've kind of heard a little bit about your history and like your passion for wanting to help people and be involved with people. You've given us some actionable tips about like the mental health space and kind of recognizing your emotions, and then we've talked a little bit about the parenting. So you are working as this clinical director and you're helping other mental health therapists. So tell me what you have going on in April. I believe we have a little conference going on. What
Mm.
we got going on?
Yeah, so me and my partner Lisa, she's the owner of the practice I work at, Turning
Okay.
Point Counseling and Consulting. We have the best damn therapists in the 757.
Love
Ooh,
that.
that should be our slogan. I don't know why it isn't, but it should be.
It should
Um,
be.
Lisa and I have both had horrendous jobs in the mental health field. Things
Mm,
can get very corporate, things can get very heartless, which really should not be in this line of work. So we run this practice in a way where therapists can thrive. And we decided last year we want to kind of pour that into I guess, I don't like calling it the industry, but it is an
it
industry,
is,
the mental
yeah.
health industry, the mental health field. And so there's no lack of workshops and conferences and conventions in our field. There is a lack of conferences where you can come and learn from people who aren't boring, who aren't stuffy and stodgy, um, where it's overly academic, which like I have nothing against the academic side. I'm in that world. Um, but like where you can just come and hang out. Like we use kind of these three words. We want to inspire, equip, and connect people,
Mm,
uh, so that they can know themselves better and then be a better presence in their work as a mental health therapist. So we're doing this conference in Virginia Beach. It's
awesome.
April 18th, 19th at the Hilton Garden Inn, the Clinician Connection Conference. It's at clinicianconnection.net.
Okay. We'll
You
share
can
the link in the
email,
comments, everyone, too.
yeah, you can email us hello at clinicianconnection.net. Or if you find me on Facebook, you just DM me or whatever, and we'll get you connected. But it's a day and a half of like great speakers who, again, they're fun and engaging. And they're not like speakers who are like, I've read 10 books on this. Let me teach. These are folks who do it,
Yeah, I've lived
who
it.
are part of it. They're teaching it. They've gone through it themselves. We have like a comedy hypnosis show that we're gonna have for folks. And we are probably gonna sell tickets for that show just separately. We're still working out if we're gonna do that.
That's
And
awesome.
man, just the opportunity to network and meet cool people. And I'm a local here, so going down to Virginia Beach isn't as exciting maybe for me, but for a lot of people, like a weekend away at the beach to learn, or to be inspired, equipped, and connected with other people, it's a great opportunity. So
That's
thank you
awesome.
for
Well,
letting me share that.
Oh, you got it. So, any of the mental health therapists, social workers, anybody who might want to get involved in something like this, we'll share the link in the comments because I think, when it comes to professional development and learning how to be with other people, you want to learn how to be with other people from people who've kicked the can down the road a little bit longer than you or have just like had different experiences because I think in a business setting, corporate setting where like it is kind of cutthroat, it sounds like you're definitely going after like collaborating. There's a lot of the pie. There's enough of the pie to go around. So we'll definitely share your stuff. Listeners, I hope that you found some value in this week. Life is better with you in it. And we want you to be working on your mental health and finding ways that we can just kind of live better lives and be more present. So thanks for having all this time to give to us, Chris. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for letting me share. It's fun.
Yay! All right. Have a great day, guys.